October 2025 began with a jolt that rippled across capitals. Reports from European analysts said Iran's $500 million drone deal with Russia had backfired. Meant to lift Russia's air power over Ukraine, it became something else entirely, a trap. Moscow did not see it. Tehran did not see it. Rewind to where it started. Iran's Shahed and Mohajer drones drew notice in late 2022. They scouted and struck. Cheap, steady, and easy to deploy. Exactly what Moscow wanted. The partnership grew. By early 2025, it was formal and bigger. Nearly $500 million, hundreds of combat drones, new jamming-resistant models, and training for Russian crews. For Iran, it meant money and prestige. For Russia, it was a lifeline under sanctions. But Ukraine moved faster, adapting, learning, and countering in real time. With Western intelligence and local talent, it built counter-drone playbooks at speed. The Air Force, cyber units, and engineers worked as one. NATO-grade electronic warfare fed Ukrainian tools. Detectors scanned radio waves and marked targets. Mobile drones hunted other drones. By the time new Iranian shipments reached Russian bases near Bryansk and Kursk, Ukraine was ready. The turning point came in September 2025. Ukraine moved on several fronts. Patriot batteries guarded the sky. RF sensors marked targets. Then it hit Russian drone hubs. Within hours, dozens of Shahed 238S and Mohajer 6S littered fields and forests. Some were shot, some were jammed on land, some were captured intact. What the captured units revealed hurt Iran most. Engineers in Kyiv opened them and found weak encryption. Commands were readable. Links could be spoofed and hijacked mid-air. That meant hijacking was possible. Ukraine's cyber teams didn't just prove it, they weaponized it. They turned the drones around mid-flight. They sent them back toward Russian sites. Fuel depots burned. Radar stations went dark. Western analysts gave it a name: the drone trap. The shock spread faster than the drones themselves. By the first week of October 2025, Ukraine said over 60% of the newest Iranian drones were gone from the fight, destroyed, captured, or grounded. Satellites showed storage sites in flames. Intercepts caught Russian officers cursing the hardware as unreliable and dangerous. The fallout hit both the battlefield and the halls of power. Iran had sold the deal as proof of a rising industry. Now its flagship export looks flawed. In Tehran, critics asked why the state poured money into a faraway war. Economists called the $500 million a sunk cost. Ukraine used the moment. Kyiv aired footage from the captured drones to show Russia's dependence on imports and how those imports failed. It wasn't just a strike. It was a lesson written in fire and code. Modern war now belongs to those who can code, adapt, and learn faster than the missiles fly. Ukraine did not just destroy enemy gear, it turned that gear into a liability. Western capitals leaned in. The EU and the United States highlighted Russia's and Iran's growing isolation. Briefings warned partners, even North Korea and Belarus, that deeper ties with Moscow carried risk. Iran's image took a hit. For years, state media praised its drone program. Now it looks hackable. Buyers noticed. Across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, officials paused talks with Iranian firms. Experts said this would change how Iran's exports are judged. AI, electronic warfare, and real-time intel ruled the fight. If comms are not secure, weapons can betray their owners. Ukraine needed weeks, not years, to flip an opponent's edge. Adaptive defense beats raw numbers. Russia scrambled. With imported drones exposed, it pressed allies for help and replacements, but the price was rising, and the damage was done. In the West, officials floated fresh sanctions on Tehran for deepening its role in an illegal war. By October 11th, 2025, the picture was clear. Russia lost a key tool. Iran's arms makers faced a trust crisis. Ukraine emerged not just stronger, but in command of the narrative. Moscow tried to spin the story. State TV called the problems temporary. It promised fixes. Leaks told another tale. Commanders were furious. Field notes from Bryansk and Belgorod reported drones veering off course, hitting Russian-held areas, or falling from the sky. Russia's plan had been simple: flood the air with cheap drones to wear down Ukrainian defenses, while saving costly missiles for major targets. That plan collapsed when more than half the drones were shot down or hijacked. Intercepts suggested troops were frustrated. Trust in leadership fell. In Iran, the tone shifted too. The deal had been sold as a sanctions triumph. After the failures, voices asked hard questions. Why stake pride and scarce cash on a distant, costly war? With inflation and unemployment already high, public patience thinned. The loss was not only money, it exposed a gap between bold claims and real capability. Sanctions followed. Washington and Brussels hit drone makers, shippers, and the intermediaries who ran the supply lines. The US warned potential buyers in the Middle East and North Africa about known weaknesses and about countermeasures already in use. For Kyiv, this was a diplomatic windfall. Leaders spoke at the European Parliament and the UN. They praised cyber and EW units. On the ground, Russia struggled without eyes in the sky. Surveillance thinned. Targeting grew worse. Supply chains bent under strain. With Iran's credibility shaken, Moscow looked to smaller sources: North Korea, Belarus, and even Myanmar. None matched Iran's scale. The gap showed on the map. In early October, images pointed to Ukrainian gains around Savatove and Kremlin. Analysts linked those moves to weaker Russian reconnaissance. Shockwaves reached the Middle East. Iran had leaned on Russia to balance the West and to inch closer to China. After the backfire, China kept a public distance. Gulf rivals saw an opening. Saudi Arabia and the UAE worked with Western partners. A regional idea grew: shared air defense with AI in the loop. Meanwhile, Russia demanded replacements under contract terms. It cited performance clauses. Tehran hesitated. Building and shipping another batch would be costly. Another failure would be worse. Reports spoke of tense calls. Officials argued over specs and the weak encryption Kyiv had cracked. There was another layer. Western cyber teams had mapped parts of the Iranian drone software months earlier. They waited. Then, Ukraine struck at scale. The win was tactical and geopolitical, weakening two adversaries at once. Diplomacy heated up. The UN called a session on arms transfers between Iran and Russia. Several countries urged tighter checks under Resolution 2231. Iran's envoy said the deals were legal defense ties, but the damage to credibility was plain. In Kyiv, officials gave the moment a name: a technological counterstrike. It fits. Ukraine was fighting on land, in the air, online, and in the information space, and winning key rounds. The Iran-Russia bond looked shaky. It had been marketed as a partnership of equals. The crisis showed a lopsided truth. Russia needed supplies. Iran needed UN political cover. After the failure, each side saw new risks in the other. That shaped NATO talks in Brussels later in the month. The focus moved beyond defense to active containment. Stop Russia and Iran regaining momentum. Give Ukraine better air defense and stronger cyber tools. Expand training. Share more data, faster. Inside Iran, money woes increased. Defense exports slid. Western sources estimated a 40% plunge in defense export revenue within a single quarter. Buyers in Africa and South Asia paused or left. State TV blamed foreign interference. Few believed it. In Russia, finding partners looked strained. Outreach to North Korea and Myanmar showed how limited the options were. These networks could not deliver enough units or quality. At home, factories lagged. Sanctions bit. Backlogs grew. Ukraine and its friends moved the other way. Kyiv's officers briefed allies on how they did it, blending EW, cyber, and rapid targeting. Think tanks called it a model for modern war. Use brains to beat bulk. The idea spread. From Japan to Indonesia, planners studied technological deterrence, how to stop an attacker by breaking links, not by matching missiles. Diplomacy shifted too. India quietly trimmed energy buys from Iran. Turkey leaned closer to Kyiv with more intel sharing. China stayed cautious. It kept trade going, but avoided defense ties that could backfire. In the Gulf, Iran's rivals doubled. They built tighter links with Western systems. They pushed joint defenses to stop swarms. By late October, another twist emerged in Tehran. Leaked notes suggested Iran's defense ministry had been warned months earlier about comms flaws. Engineers flagged the risk. Politics overruled them. The The drive to please Moscow won. That fed anger inside the technical core. Rifts showed. Even Iran's usual partners took notice. Groups in Syria and Lebanon did not want the same weaknesses in their arsenals. Quiet doubt spread. The harm was not just one contract. It was to gain a reputation. Ukraine's real gain was larger than land. It was strategic knowledge. It cuts at the supply web that binds authoritarian states. It gave democracies a reason to stand closer. It proved that open collaboration can outthink closed regimes. By late 2025, the line was stark. Russia and Iran stood more alone, sanctioned and short on trust. Ukraine stood bruised but stronger. Its methods drew study worldwide. Looking to 2026, most analysts agreed. The war had turned a page. Mass and range still matter, but control of code, signals, and data can decide the day. Ukraine just wrote the opening lines. In the end, Iran's $500 million deal was a warning label. It showed the limits of swagger and opaque alliances. It showed how faith in hardware can hide soft spots in software. It showed that in this era, brains beat machines. For Iran and Russia, the lesson was bitter. For Ukraine, it was a leap. And for the world, it was a preview of war's future, where victory goes to those who adapt fast, lock down their systems, and turn the enemy's tools against him.